Helmut Marko has spoken about the future of Red Bull's driver lineup yet again, as it looks like the confidence that Perez has that he will be on the grid from 2025 onwards is slowly but surely fading away, with Marko giving a timeline as to when we're going to receive some juicy news regarding the 4 seats of Red Bull and Racing Bulls. Has the Perez stint with the Austrian squad finally come to an end, and if so, who is going to replace him? A mystery that remained to be solved for 2025 is the Red Bull and Racing Bulls drivers lineup, and now it looks like we're going to receive some news sooner rather than later. Even though Perez was full of confidence that he'll drive in 2025 because of the contract he has and the sum of money that Red Bull would have to pay him in order to get rid of him, that is now slowly but surely fading away after Marko's latest statement. When talking about the current situation in the latest Speed Week column, the veteran Austrian, who is endorsing both Tsunoda and Lawson to get that second seat because they need 2 high points scoring drivers in the team from 2025 onwards, said, "Since we have the fastest and best driver in the field in Max, it is only natural that we take his preferences into account when it comes to developing the car's handling characteristics. I am sure that as long as we give him a competitive car, he will stay at Red Bull Racing. We will be announcing news in the next few days about what the driver pairing will look like next year. There is a lot of speculation and transfer fees are being mentioned that are complete nonsense." This gives a fresh twist to the entire saga, because if the fees that have been mentioned in the past couple of days, varying from 16 up to 75 million euros from different sources like Nico Rosberg and Viaplay, might not be entirely true. This is giving Red Bull the option to get rid of Perez as early as possible, but that doesn't mean they won't have to pay him. There is a strict law that if you want your driver gone before the year his contract ends, you have to buy it out, and that of course directly affects your budget cap. This was one of the primary issues as to why Red Bull hesitated so much and are still reluctant to give their reasons publicly as to whether or not Perez will continue to be Max's teammate from 2025 onwards. But the facts remain the same. The team has 2 drivers who are highly competitive in Lawson and Tsunoda, and both of them have been on par with Perez in qualifying and point scoring, even though they were driving the 8th fastest car on the grid, while Perez was driving the 3rd fastest one with Verstappen. And Marko couldn't have been clearer in giving his verdict on why Red Bull needs to have a strong second driver from 2025 onwards, as they have now a strong competition not only from Ferrari and McLaren, but potentially Mercedes as well. We cannot pretend like Aston Martin isn't making any moves for the newly regulated era, and from 2026 the entire grid could be shaken up to the point of Verstappen asking himself whether or not this is the perfect environment for him. When talking about this and the shareholders' opinion on the drivers lineup from 2025 onwards, Marko said, "We have to have 2 drivers who finish in the points. Max is more than 200 points ahead of Sergio in the drivers' standings. For our employees, it is a disappointment because they will not receive their bonuses as they depend on our position in the Constructors' Championship. There is a meeting Monday after Abu Dhabi. All the major people are there, all of the shareholders, and the decision will be done. We always, or most of the time, brought our own drivers through the Red Bull program, and I think it's a philosophical decision. Do we stick to that? And what I got from the shareholders is it will be in this direction." There are some humiliating facts regarding Perez, and such is the one that he is the only driver from the top 8 to have never won a race and only led 1 lap throughout the entire 2024 season. Furthermore, if he was to miss out on the entirety of the season, apart from the first 3 races in 2024, Red Bull would have still finished 3rd ahead of Mercedes based on just Verstappen's points. This goes to show that Red Bull cannot be considered as a serious team if they keep on going with Perez, because drivers like Gasly and Albon have been sacked for much better results in an era that wasn't even dominated by Red Bull. But still, the confidence from Perez regarding his seat, even though remaining present, is slowly fading away. And when talking about it to a greater extent and elaborating on what will happen between him him and the Austrian team. He said, well, at the moment, I don't know. I just know I've got a contract to race next year. Unless something changes in the coming days, that is going to be the situation for next year. I think at the moment, all I can say is I've got a contract that I signed up in the middle of the year to race for the team for the next 3 years. So we'll see what happens and how the conversation goes in the coming days. Of course, these claims have been disputed by both Horner and Marko, who stated that while they gave Perez everything they could, it was still not enough for him to propel the team in the right direction. The Mexican driver sits third in the most damages done to the car, just behind the duo of Williams, with 4.8 million euros in damage. And this money, of course, could have easily been used for different goals, such as developing upgrades to the troublesome car that Verstappen managed to win the championship with. And this is why there are so many problems with Perez and his contract, because although he causes so much damage to the team, he is also compensating from the financial point of view thanks to his sponsors, Carlos Slim and his companies. If Perez is no longer part of the team, Red Bull will lose massive influence in Latin America in terms of popularity and merchandise sale, and they'll also lose those checks from Slim. So this is putting them in a very difficult situation where they might have to wait out for the contract to pass and then promise the Racing Bulls drivers a seat once things end up in a natural way. Elaborating further on this, Horner said that Perez is old and wise enough to come to his own conclusions. As he added, I'm going to let Checo come to his own conclusions. Nobody is forcing him one way or another. It's not a nice situation for him to obviously be in. Checo has had a very tough year. Obviously, the points table are what they are. However, the timing couldn't have been poorer for Red Bull, because whether we like it or not, the Austrian team has such young talent that is eager to prove their worth on the grid, and Horner himself admitted that the drivers who will be considered as a replacement for Perez are the current Racing Bulls drivers. Furthermore, the Brit said, I think Yuki's done a good job, so in the event that anything were decided with Checo, they would be the candidates we would look towards. I think Liam, in challenging circumstances, has done a very good job. If you analyse what he's done in the time that he's had and the race pace he's had, I think he's done a good job. This opens up the door for Isaac Hadjar, who's been a very competitive driver in Formula 2 as well, and took the title fight to the last race in Abu Dhabi with Bortoleto, who already secured his seat in Formula 1. If Hadjar manages to be promoted, it would definitely mean that the shareholders have a massive strength in the decisions of the drivers' lineup, further proving that some things are not remotely left to Horner and Marko. All of this goes to show that Red Bull are in front of a very difficult situation, and even though the buyout sums that have been brought to the media might not be realistic after the latest statement from Marko, it's still an issue that might prevent the team from promoting their drivers from within. Of course, Tsunoda has already raised his doubts as to whether or not he is in the mix of becoming a Red Bull driver, because he doesn't believe the team, even if they say that he is in the mix. With all of this in mind, do you think the Red Bull are going to replace Perez sooner rather than later? And more importantly, who do you think will be a more proper driver to be alongside Verstappen, Tsunoda or Lawson? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in the latest Hamilton development of events with Ferrari, have a look at the video that's appearing on your screen right now.